Welcome to week 12 of Bible Studies for Life. Boy, we're getting near the end. August is here. End of August, coming up close. Looking forward to starting out in the fall in September. But we're going to be in Matthew chapter 18 today with a parable that Jesus tells that is probably familiar. Let me just say one thing about this before we even go into that. Sometimes when we deal with passages that are very familiar, especially if you're in an adult class where people are, they know that story well, there are a couple of things that can happen. One is we can just kind of skip over it without really being careful in reading it and thinking about it. We just kind of get the deal, and then everybody kind of tells their stories. The other thing that can happen is we can dive into weeds and miss the point of the story. We can want to get into things that are get into such minuteness that we actually miss what it's there for. So don't miss the point of the story. That's the first part. Don't miss the point. And you can spend some time talking about the point, but also don't get carried away thinking about other things and don't let your class run off down the road where they're talking about things that aren't related to the passage at all, because they're so familiar with it they think we really don't need to talk about this a lot. The simple things often are the things that we have to talk about the most, especially when it comes to the point of application, that is, of applying these things into our lives and thinking them through. So, okay, subscribe, like, comment, share, let's dive in. Then Peter approached him and asked, "Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? As many as 7 times? I tell you, not as many as 7, Jesus replied, but 70 times 7. Okay, now have you ever just wondered what happened among the disciples that brought Peter to the point where he decided to ask this question of Jesus? What was going on in their little campsite? What was going on as they traveled around where Peter said, "Lord, how many times do I have to forgive? 7 times? It sounds like a lot to me. Do I really have to forgive 7 times? And Jesus answered, "Oh, not as many as 7. And Peter probably goes, "Good, because I didn't want to forgive them anymore." And then Jesus says, 70 times 7. Oh, man. It just blows him up, right? It's like, I thought this was going to be, I wanted something to let me off the hook here. And Jesus just raised the bar way past where I was willing to go. This is typically what Jesus does, right? And maybe in some ways it's typically what Peter does. Peter represents us in so many ways, doesn't he? Because so many of us identify with him, and kind of the way he looks at the world and how he thinks about the world is so common to so many of us, right? Okay. For this reason, so now Jesus says, let me tell you a story. For this reason, the kingdom of heaven can be compared to a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. And when he began to settle accounts, one who owed 10,000 talents was brought before him. Since he did not have the money to pay it back, his master commanded that he, his wife, his children, and everything he had be sold to pay the debt. So here's the setup for the story. The king says, I got a lot of people that owe me a lot. It's time to settle some debts up here. So he calls in this one servant, and this servant owes him 10,000 talents. He owes him basically 10,000 days worth of work. It's more than he has and more than he'll be able to pay. He can't do it. And so the king says, well, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to sell you all off into slavery. Your entire family is going to be sold into slavery, and whatever we get for you, that'll pay your debt. So you're going to spend the rest of your life in indentured servitude to someone, so that you can pay back what you owe me. These servants don't have the ability. The king says, I'll take care of that. At this, the servant fell face down before him and said, "Be patient with me, and I will pay you everything." Then the master of that servant had compassion, released him, and forgave him the loan. Whoa. Now this is just, this story suddenly takes a turn, right? He falls down at his feet, on his face, right? He is laying on his face in front of this man saying, I can't do it right now, but if you'll be patient, I'll do it. I will pay you everything. Don't put my family into slavery. I will pay you everything. And the master of that servant had compassion and released him and forgave him the loan. Did you see this? He didn't say, okay, I'll give you another chance. Work it off. We'll meet back here in 6 months and we'll see how you're doing. That's not what he did at all. He turns this story, completely turns, and he says, you know what? I'm just going to forgive you. Totally. I'm no longer holding that over your head. You're completely free. You can go do what you want to do, live how you want to live. You don't owe me anything. I don't know about you, but that's quite a deal, right? Because he owed him so much that his entire family was about to go into slavery. And instead of taking partial payment or taking payment over time or saying, let's see how you can work it out, he says, it's forgiven. It's all forgiven. You're totally free. You don't owe me anything. You're free to go. The servant went out and found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. He grabbed him, started choking him, and said, pay what you owe me. Okay, so this guy walks out of that meeting. He walks away from this meeting where he has just been set free from this huge debt that he owed, right? A debt which he could not pay. I'm sounding like a song. He owed a debt he could not pay. He had no way to make it back, and he had been completely set free from it. And he walks out the door, and he meets this guy that owes him a little bitty, a couple $100, and he's like, hey, you need to give me, he's choking him, right? He's grabbing him, he's choking him, you need to pay me what you owe me. At this, his fellow servant fell down and began begging him, be patient with me, and I will pay you back. It sounds vaguely familiar. Be patient with me, and I will pay you everything. Be patient with me and I will pay. Yeah, that looks familiar. But he wasn't willing. Instead, he went and threw him into prison until he could pay what was owed. Okay, now this servant did what was legally allowed. Legally allowed. Had that guy put into prison until he can pay me back. It's going to be hard to pay him when he's in prison, right? When the other servants saw what had taken place, they were deeply distressed and went and reported to their master everything that had happened. Now, the other people look at it and go, that just doesn't seem right. This is something wrong here, because this guy just forgave you all of this, and then here this guy owes you this little bit, and you had him thrown into jail. I mean, where is your gratitude? Where is your humility? Where is the understanding of who you are in this story, right? And the events that have happened, and where is your understanding of what has happened for you, and why can't you give some of that to someone else? Why can't this grace was extended to you? Why can't you give some grace to somebody else? Why the law? All of a sudden, you're laying down the law to them, but grace was given to you. What's going on? Legally, you're in your rights to do it, but it just doesn't seem right. And so they tell their master, and then after he had summoned him, his master said to him, you wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt because you begged me. Shouldn't you also have had mercy on your fellow servant as I had mercy on you? That's exactly what the servants were telling him. Look, it just doesn't seem right. Where was his mercy? Why wasn't he having mercy the way that you had mercy on him? It just doesn't seem right. And because he was angry, his master handed him over to the jailers to be tortured until he could pay everything that was owed. We'll just turn you over, and it was going to be, we're going to sell you into slavery. Now it's going to be, you're going to be tortured until you can pay everything, which means you're not ever going to be able to pay everything, right? It's just not going to happen. Now Jesus turns to Peter. So also my heavenly Father will do to you unless every one of you forgives his brother or sister from your heart. He turns to his disciples, Peter especially, and this is what my Father is going to do to you unless you are willing to forgive your brother or sister from your heart, not just in words only, but truly, sincerely. Let go. Let go. Stop holding on to that. I mean, right, by law, legally, they harmed you, and you can exact punishment on them. But look at what you have been forgiven from the Heavenly Father. And here we're looking forward, right? Jesus is still here. He hadn't gone to the cross yet. He's looking forward. We look back and look at the mountain of debt that our Heavenly Father has forgiven us. And who in the world are we to not have gratitude, to not have humility, to have received all that grace and want to respond to all of that grace with law. It's a pretty simple story, isn't it? I mean, really. And I don't miss it. Let's not miss the impact of the simplicity of this story. It's so important for us to not gloss over it or want to talk about other things instead of talking about the mandate to forgive and forgive and forgive, to let it go, which is the root meaning of the word forgive. Let it go. Stop hanging on to it. Let it go. All right. Hope that helps. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Thanks for teaching, for leading. God bless you. Be sure and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Like, comment, share it with others. All right. We'll see you next week. We've got one more week left in the summer of 2022. All right. See you next time.